You might want to keep the name Mario Sikora there and cover your face or turn the camera off. Okay. So, or you might not want to use the name Mario Sikora for sure. I might even change mine. So, all right. So we are going to talk about how do we accelerate growth for each of the 9 Enneagram types, right? And so we have these practices at Awareness to Action that we call accelerators. Okay, and when there are 9 of them, one correlated to each point of the Enneagram. And we find that these are things that help us and our clients grow. So
Yeah,
with me,
okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say with me today are the grown-ups in the room, Maria Jose Munita and Tamer Zanaty, who are partners with Awareness to Action, as are Claudia Schuffler and Becky Gorman. So hi, everybody. So they're going to be every so often steering me back from the brink. Maria Jose, why don't you start us off and introduce what we're going to talk about today and a couple of announcements.
Yes, and I'll repeat that. If those of you who appear as Mario Sikora, your name, want to change your name so that we can call you by your real name, please feel free to change it. So today we're going to talk about how to accelerate growth. And for those of you who are familiar with our approach, it is a very practical approach to the Enneagram. We spend a lot of time trying to define the types in a very kind of precise and useful way, but we spend even more time trying to find ways to use it for our growth and our clients' growth and transformation. So one of the things that we use are the core qualities and accelerators. We don't teach these normally in short trainings. We do, however, teach them in our module 2. And this is something that is very powerful, and we like to share it to audiences that are familiar with the Enneagram, but not necessarily with things like this. So we're going to be doing this, and we also want to share with you that we are doing a podcast, The Enneagram in a Movie. Do you want to talk about it, Mario, Tamer?
Yeah, Enneagram in a Movie is actually one of the podcasts that I like a lot. We have started it since January. And the idea of the podcast that in each episode, we take one movie that represents a specific either instinctual bias or Enneagram strategy, one of the 9 Ennea-types or the 3 instinctual biases. And it's not specifically one character inside the movie as much as the whole movie represent the characteristics of the domain of instinctual bias or the strategy, Ennea-type and strategy that we are discussing. So we have we enjoyed having this podcast discussing some of the top movies of all times, like Godfather, like Saturday Night Fever, like many other of them. And we encourage you just to enjoy listening to it, as well as trying to get a flavor on how can you see the Ennea-types or the instinctual biases in 3D through these discussions. We had also a couple of amazing guests. We have hosted them in the podcast, like Tom Condon, like Russ Hudson, and these were really rich episodes.
Becky Gorman as well.
Yes,
right.
Lots of zombies.
Yes.
Not in the Becky episode, but in the Tom and Russ episodes. Yeah. So so you can find that at the enneagramainamovie.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We're all over the place. So what else do you have for us, Maria Jose?
So we're starting 2 certification modules on May 5th. One is the module 1 out of 3 modules. So we're starting module 1, and that has the 3 instinctual biases, the 9 strategies or Ennea-types, and the 27 subtypes, together with the awareness to action process and how to use it. It's a very practical and interesting module, and it has online sessions as well as offline videos and group work. And we're also starting module 2, which includes these core qualities and accelerators, and also the awareness and action charts that we use to work with clients, combining these 2 things plus all the work of module 1. So it's a very practical, and it's called Accelerating Growth, this module 2. They're both starting May 5th. You have to go through module 1 in order to access module 2.
And the good news that today you will get a promo code where if you register with this promo code, you will get 10% discount on the price.
You'll receive that promo code in an email after the session. So we'll send it out to everybody. Okay. Oh, we have another Mario Sikora joining us. All right, great.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
right. So we ready?
We're ready. Go ahead.
We're done pitching our stuff. We're done shilling our wares and trying to suck as much money out of these people as we can. So let's move on to the good stuff. All right. So the Enneagram is typically thought of as a model of 9 different kinds of people. And, you know, we all pay lip service to having all of the types in us somewhere, right? You know, we always say that. But we really don't know what that means, right? So what does it mean to have these different types in you? What are we really talking about here? And Jose, why don't you put the slides back up? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Enneagram is a model of 9 different kinds of people, but it is also a model of 9 aspects of who we are. Now, when we talk about the 9 strategies, the 9 different approaches, we don't really think that everybody uses all the strategies or that we have all strategies in us. So when we're talking about kind of the first layer of the Enneagram, we typically not to focus on having all of these strategies in us, right? But we talk about a deeper layer of the Enneagram, and we're going to look at that in a moment, but it's this layer we call the core qualities, okay? And the core qualities is where it really does get to being a model of 9 elements of each of us, right? So when we talk about these core qualities, we're talking about things that we all can relate to, right? And so this is where the Enneagram really becomes a model, you know, kind of an intra-personal model, meaning it describes dynamics in each one of us. The problem is that early in life, these core qualities become stunted, right? They get kind of stuffed down through the socialization process, okay? And we have to find ways to help them continue to grow, okay? And the accelerators is one of the ways that we do that, okay? So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to today describe the core qualities kind of at a high level, right? Give a brief description of them. We're going to talk a little bit about how they become stunted, but then we're going to turn our attention to these 9 accelerators, what they are, why they're associated with each Enneagram type, and how we can incorporate those, not just to kind of further our spiritual growth and development, but also our ability to function in the world. Okay. Jose, Tamer, anything you would add to that?
No, I think we will be seeing the other things as we go. I think that there's some typical questions about how these are similar or not to the essential aspects and all these things, but we will cover that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sort of.
what I would like to add is that this is a kind of advanced work and very impactful, a kind of transformational. I mean, the way I use it with my clients when they really have this, when they are in this stage of not being able to go to the next. I mean, we work with leaders. So when a leader is feeling the ceiling glass, not being able to go to the next level, this is the area that I work on, and it's really transformations. It can take some time, but it's really transformation.
Great. So, so when we think of working with people, because, you know, as Tamer said, we're all very often working with corporate people, and not just because they're corporate people, but because the engagement tends to be kind of limited in scope, right? Usually when you're working as an executive coach with somebody, it's a 6 or 9 month engagement. And you don't always have time to get to the real deep stuff. Okay. Sometimes you do, depends on the client, but other times, you know, you have to stick with kind of the stuff that's above the surface of the iceberg here, right? And so we use this image to represent the depth that we go to with our clients, right? So we have the instinctual biases, right? These are the subtypes that everybody talks about. You know, we refer to them as navigating, preserving, and transmitting. And these represent kind of our fundamental values, right? What we place a focus on, what we emphasize, what we value. Okay. Then there are the 9 strategies. Okay. And the strategies, you know, these are the Ennea-Types that everybody talks about. We don't really like to think of fixed types. We think of them as adaptive strategies, approaches to the world that help us satisfy our values, right? So you take these 2 elements, the 3 instinctual biases and the 9 strategies, and then you get these 27 variations, okay, or what we call subtypes, right? Now that's kind of the first layer of the Enneagram, right? Or the first 2 layers of the Enneagram. These core qualities that I was just talking about a few minutes ago are something deeper, right? They're under the waterline of the psyche, so to speak. Okay. Sometimes we talk about them with our clients, other times we don't. Okay. Sometimes we don't because, you know, they're just not ready to go there, or it's not relevant to the engagement. But if they're open to it, we will bring these up. Now, the accelerators are something that kind of bridges the gap between what's above the waterline and what's below the waterline. And they're actually fairly simple practices, right? That we all benefit from developing, but it helps to work with them first, starting with the one related to our Enneagram point, and then the 2 at the Enneagram points related to our Enneagram point. So for example, I as an 8 want to work at the with the accelerator at point 8 and the accelerators at point 2 and 5. They reinforce each other, support each other, amplify each other in a sense, in a nice way. Okay. Go ahead.
I was thinking about this as almost like a secret weapon, you know, that you don't use it all the time, but at some point in the coaching engagement, you can tell that this is what the client wants or needs, really.
Needs, yeah.
And then you use it. It's not like with the types, and it's more obvious with in the surface, but at some point there's a moment when this is required and this is what's useful.
Yeah, yeah. Now, as you're going to see, I don't know, I think they're deceptively simple, even though they're not particularly easy. And some of them might even feel counterintuitive, as you'll see when we get to them. Okay. But again, the main reason we work with the accelerators is to kind of soften the ground for the development and maturation of the core qualities. Okay. So let's go to the next slide, Maria Jose.
It's
Okay.
just superficial.
Yeah. So everybody has immediately fallen asleep when we put this slide up. So don't worry, we're not going to go through all 67 boxes on this, okay? So we just want to talk about where this idea came from, because a lot of times when we talk about the core qualities, people ask us, well, what does that have to do with the holy idea, or what does that have to do with the essential aspects that Sandra Maitre talks about? So we just like to kind of, point that out here. The core qualities were primarily influenced by the essential aspects that Sandra Maitre talks about in her book, The Spiritual Dimension of the Enneagram, right? So I was reading that book years ago when it first came out, and I was intrigued by the idea, but there were some metaphysical assumptions about the essential aspects that troubled me, okay? And some of the names, for example, like merging gold, okay? Not real corporate friendly language, on that. So we started thinking, okay, what's a better term for this? Right?
Not very intuitive either.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the pearl, for example. Okay, that could mean a lot of things, right? And when I read what Maitre says about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? And I'm not going to get into the metaphysical assumptions, that I object to, but it simply has to do with Neoplatonic essentialism and, some of these other things. Didier can explain that to you sometime. So email Didier for a lecture on the pitfalls of Neoplatonism, right, Didier? Okay. All right. So the core qualities are similar. The way we see them, okay, is that these are qualities that exist in all of us in an immature form when we are born, okay? Anybody who has ever met a newborn child, let alone anyone who is a parent, will tell you that children don't come into the world as a blank slate. If you have more than one child, you recognize child A is different from child B. Okay, same parents, same, fundamentals, but they're different, right? So they come into the world not as, psycho-spiritual lumps of clay, but, with their own characteristics, their own temperament. And these qualities are there. Okay. Um, but they're immature, just like everything else about a baby. Okay. A baby boy is not a man. A baby girl is not a woman. All right. Depending on how we define those terms. Okay. But there is a maturation that occurs physically, psychologically, and one would argue spiritually from the infant to the adult. And these core qualities operate the same way. My philosophical objection is that a lot of people who teach ideas like this talk about these ideas being fully formed, right? We just have to get back to our essence, okay? No, because the thing we would be going back to is very immature, and we don't want to go back to that. The analogy we like to use is that of an acorn and an oak tree. Okay. Everything that needs to be in the oak tree is in the acorn, but it cannot grow and mature without the appropriate nutrients, sunlight, water, etc. Okay. The same thing happens with the core qualities. They're there in immature form, but they need nurturing. Okay. Part of the way we nurture them is through the application of the accelerators. Now, when I came up with this idea back in I don't know, it was about 1948, I think, I was thinking about calling them the fertilizers, but, there's a connotation there that probably is not the best. So we ended up settling with accelerator. All right. Maria, is there anything you'd add before we move on to the next slide?
No, I think that I just want to reinforce the implications, because it may look like a philosophical treat of yours, like trying to define this in a way that it's more robust or aligned with your view. But I think that if in practical ways, it has such implications in that when people say in this thing about the false self, the true self, and all these conversations that we hear in the Enneagram world, and the idea that if I get rid of my ego, I'll find my true self, and this is my essence. Well, it doesn't really work like that. There's a lot of work that needs to get done in order for us to manifest these essential aspects or the core qualities that we're talking about.
Let's go to the next slide here. So in the awareness to action approach, we have 3 Enneagrams that we use, right? Those of you who know the history of the Enneagram know that Oscar Ichazo had 108 Enneagrams, or what he called Enneagons, that he developed. Only a few of them were related to personality. I'm not that ambitious or that smart, so I keep my limit to about 3 or 4 here, right? And so those are the Enneagram of the strategies, which is again kind of the first layer of talking about type. The core qualities, which we're talking about now, and the 9 accelerators, which we will talk about shortly. Okay. Now, if you would like a PDF copy of these slides, send us an email at info@awareness-to-action.com, and we'll be happy to provide those to you afterwards. Okay. So people don't have to take pictures of their computer screen if they don't want to. All right. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Oh, and of course, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I can't see everybody on my screen because we have hundreds and hundreds of people with us here today. So, if you're waving your hand, I probably won't see us. Just put something in the chat for us, okay? All right. So
all these Mario Sikoras are like minions.
yeah. If you joined us late and you used the link that I emailed you, you are currently appearing as Mario Sikora. So please fix that. It kind of creeps me out. All right. Let's go back, Maria Jose, to the previous slide. I want to talk about the core qualities a bit. Yeah. All right. So what are we talking about when we're talking about core qualities? Okay. Now, for those of you who are parents or who, work around, infants or have ever been in a maternity ward or something like that, take yourself back in your memory. I have 4 boys, so yeah, I have very vivid memories of maternity wards and, the things that go on there. So, when a baby comes into the world, like we said, they have a personality, right? My wife would talk about how, in utero, our sons were different, right? First son was like this, and the second son was like that. First son was moving all the time and kicking, and the second son, she would have to kind of tap him on the head every so often to see if he was still, bopping around. And we also have these qualities, and I kind of like to describe what they look like in in the beginning, right? So we're going to start at point 9. I always start at point 9 for some reason, usually because 9s get skipped and they get, having to wait to the end. So
maybe you're a 4 and you want to do it differently, Mario.
Maybe that's what it is. Yes. I'm still trying to find my place on the Enneagram, but maybe it's a 4. So benevolence. Benevolence means goodwill, right? Lack of bad intention. In the Christian traditions and some of the other traditions, we have this idea of original sin, right? That we are born flawed, missing, that sort of thing. Now, there's whole deep philosophical and religious conversations we could have about that. I like to emphasize the basic goodness of infants, okay? I've met lots of kids, and some of them are really rotten little things that, I don't want any, to spend any time with. But as far as I can tell, most of them start out okay, right? And, so there's this basic goodness that's there, this lack of ill intent that we refer to as benevolence, okay? But as the child starts to be socialized, they start to get these messages that you are not inherently good. You have to be good. Okay? How many times do we tell our children, be good today? Okay, when they go off to school, or when mommy or daddy leaves them at daycare, or goes, leaves the home, you be good today. And so they start to get this message is that goodness is not something you are, it's something you do. And so their feeling of inherent goodness starts to get stunted. Okay. Now, I'm going to describe this for all 9 of the Enneagram points. And for those of you like me who are parents, you don't have to feel guilty about, destroying your children, or, wounding them. Well, some of you should, but, I mean, these are things that kind of naturally happen as we go through life. Okay. So it's, this is nobody's fault. It's just the socialization process. Okay. That we need to be aware of so we can work with people. All right.
Now
So,
you do become more aware of what you're telling your children, and
yes, yes,
and I catch
yeah.
myself saying all these things like be good and take care and don't do these or be a good girl, and I know that I shouldn't, but it's
Yeah.
just tough not to do it.
And it, when we're aware of it, it allows us to catch ourselves in the act and sort of modify, right? So so we don't, maybe I don't say be good to my sons. I'll say, okay, make sure you mind your manners, right? Make sure you behave, which is different, right? Because it's not about them, it's about what they do, right? So, little tips for parents. All right. So at point 1, we have objectivity. Now, the initial experience of every child is not one of objectivity. They exist in a subjective state, meaning they can only see the world through their own lens and all that sort of. So I get that. Okay. What immature objectivity is the lack of prejudice and preconception, right? They don't have ideas about how they should act, what's right, what's wrong, who we should, stay away from, that sort of thing. Um, they're born without prejudices, okay? But they grow to develop prejudices, as life goes on. They start picking up the biases of their parents, right? Or they just develop theirs on their own through their experience, right? So they start to lose this mature objectivity, become stunted, okay? Um, at point 2, there's compassion. Compassion is, the ability to experience what another is experiencing, right? Be in a state of compassion, right? I feel what you feel. Now, if you've ever been in a maternity ward, you know that once one infant starts to cry, feel distress, they all start to cry. They pick up on each other's distress. That's that natural compassion. We can feel what other people feel. But in time, it becomes really painful and difficult to feel what other people feel, right? When we see people suffer and we think there's only so much we can do about it, we start to shut down our own compassion, right? We start to not look at what's going on over there, right? Because I don't want to see it. I remember being with my 3rd son, and we were walking in Center City, Philadelphia. He was about 5 or 6 years old. And, we would see the occasional homeless person. And he would say, Dad, when I see homeless people, I feel really bad. And I want to give them my stuff. But I also like my stuff, right? So he felt this conflict, right? I want to do, but I need to think about me as well. And we all kind of feel that to some extent. And so what do? We shut down our compassion, right? We stunt it. So I don't feel the pain of others. At point 3, it's value, walk into a room with a baby and it's like Moses separating the Red Sea, right? It's, you know, the crowd parts, everybody gathers round. Ooh, look at the beautiful baby, all these things. And it's treated like a treasure. And this is a wonderful thing because they are a treasure. But when you think about what they do, right? Yeah, you know, they're kind of a pain in the neck, right? They poop and they pee and they cry at night and they always want to eat at the wrong times and all of these things. So, you know, even though we treasure them, they're really not adding that much value in a very practical sense. Okay. So they start, you know, so but we treasure them anyway, right? Because of this inherent value that every human being has. But what message do we start to get? We start to get this message that, you know what, you have to perform in order to be valued. You have to get good grades. You have to be good at sports. You have to be attractive. You have to, you know, get a good career, do your homework, clean your room, do. And your value is associated with what you do. Okay. We lose this feeling of inherent worth. Now, I'm hoping by this point you can start to see the connection to the Enneagram types here. And even though we all experience all of these, the wounding of the core quality at our Enneagram point is kind of the fundamental issue we all have. So for threes, it's loss of contact with value, right? It's loss of the maturation or lack of the maturation of value, and the, you know, the interpretation of value is kind of primitive and immature, right? So what do? They start looking for ways to overcompensate. Okay, threes practice being outstanding instead of feeling valuable, but it's about doing instead of being. All right. Point four, every child is an individual, right? The first thing that happens with a newborn is they clean it off, they take it over to a table, and they do a footprint, right? They put the low jack, you know, kind of electronic tracer around the ankle of the child, you know, so they don't get mixed up. You know, there's the identifier there, but then they take a footprint of the child. Why? So that they can identify the child, right? Because they know that every child has a distinct footprint. Okay. I'll just share with you very briefly my most vivid memory of one of my most vivid memories of my first son being born is after they did all these things, there were two nurses standing there. I'm standing about 3 or 4 feet behind them. And one nurse turns to the other and says, you know, the baby looks just like the father, but in a good way. Right. So you know, I didn't really know what to make of that, you know, other than, you know, I'm right here, you know. But anyway, so again, it's about value. It's that we place on things. Is the child good looking or not, etc. Okay, it's a true story. Anyway, I was talking about individuality, wasn't I? Right. So here's what happens to the child. They start to lose their own sense of identity because they're getting all these messages from parents and siblings, and, you know, no, you should like this, no, you should like that, you should be like this, you should be like that. So they start to, this feeling of individuality, just me being who I am without having to manufacture an identity, starts to feel stunted. Okay. And again, the analogy is like that acorn. It's kind of growing into a little sapling, right? But it's not getting the nurturing it needs to grow into the oak tree, right? And kind of what's happening in our childhood is we're not getting enough water, we're not getting enough nutrients in the soil, that sort of thing, not enough sunlight. Okay. At point five, the core quality is intuition, kind of knowing what to do, right? Babies can't figure things out. They're not that smart, right? They don't know, you know, how to do, you know, even simple math or anything like that. They just respond to the world based on intuition, right? What does my gut tell me? Okay, for lack of a better word. All right. But of course, they start to get messages. You can't trust yourself. You have to know things. You have to understand the world's a complicated place. You can't just trust your gut because you'll do stupid things. And that's not bad advice from a parent, right? Kids do really stupid things. I've got 4 boys. They're morons, right? I mean, they just do things that are really dumb. So, we need somebody to tell us, I know that feels okay, but you might want to rethink it. Okay. The problem is the child gets this message not to trust yourself, okay, not to act in the way that feels appropriate. At point 6 is confidence. Okay? Um, a baby doesn't know that the world is a scary place yet. Of course, babies are going to have anxiety, that sort of thing, and some are more anxious than others, just by their wiring, but they haven't learned about all the dangers out there, right? And the parents and the holding environment teach them about those dangers, right? No, 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 whoa, 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 don't go there. Don't do that. Don't do this. Don't run with scissors. Don't play with matches. All these things. Again, not bad advice, okay? But the child starts to develop this anxiety, right? This feeling of, hey, the world's a dangerous place and I need to be alert for dangers that can occur. Um, point 7, joy, right? If you watch babies, there'll be times when they just start to smile and laugh and feel good. They feel this innate joy, independent of stimulation, right? It's just this feeling of contentment and well-being that is satisfying. Okay. And again, it starts to get stunted, right? Calm down, right? Are you,
Why are
you
you
say something?
laughing? Why do you laugh so much?
Yeah, why do you laugh so much, right? Yeah, yeah, quit being silly, okay? Settle down, right? All these sort of messages that the child gets. Okay? And then finally at point 8, we have vitality. And vitality is just this natural energy, right? This desire to do stuff, this desire to engage with the world, this desire to put myself out there, to break things, just to figure out what happens when I do it, right? I mean, when I push against this, what happens? When I run real fast, what happens? All these sort of things, right? It's this energy in the child that just needs to come out. Okay? Now, what does the parent do? Say, just settle down, go to your room, right? When you go to school, you have to sit there in the chair and pay attention all day, right? So we get all these messages that say, calm down, right? Don't be so energetic. I remember once with my 4 sons, they were running around, playing football in the living room and things like that. And I just lost it, right? I just said, stop it. All of you go to your rooms and play video games, right? Because I just wanted them away. All right. Now, I know that does not qualify me as parent of the year. I should have gone and told them to read, Homer or something, but I'm only human. Okay. So video games is good. The point here is, however, we get these messages that say, you're too much. Just stop. Okay. And so even 8s start to feel a little bit dead inside, right? There's this part of them that kind of stifles themselves, presses the energy down, and loses contact with it. Okay? So there's this um, stunting of vitality that occurs, right? So each of us is wrestling with the stunting of the core qualities. And I'm sure that as I spoke to all 9 of those, you could relate to all of them, right? If you're human and fairly self-aware, you probably did. Um, but again, it's the one at our Enneagram point that we feel the most acutely. And a lot of the issues of our personality style start to kind of aggregate around this. Now, if you read A.H. Almas's books, he has this, what he calls the theory of the holes. Okay. And he talks about how we have this essence that gets wounded and these scabs sort of develop over the wound. Okay. And those scabs represent personality. Now, again, I don't quite see it that way because it implies that the essence is kind of whole from the beginning. For me, the way we like to think about it is that to cover up the wounding that we feel because of the stunting of our core qualities, we come to substitute our preferred strategy for the core quality. So an 8 says, I just need to feel more alive. So what do? They use the strategy of striving to feel powerful as a way to feel alive. Okay. But it's not the same. It's about excess rather than experience for 8s very often. Okay. So it's kind of like I have an itch on this shoulder, and to try to make it go away, I scratch this shoulder and I wonder why I'm not satisfied. Okay. So when we use the ego, the personality, to try and solve that itch, we end up dissatisfied. Go ahead, Maria Jose.
Yeah, that it's probably worth mentioning that we don't think that the strategy kind of we create the strategy or that it got created to substitute the loss or the stunting of the core quality, but that they coexist. We have no idea what's first or if it's a consequence really, but they coexist, and we use one to substitute the other one.
Yeah. We like to think though of them as co-emergent, right?
Yeah.
As phenomenon that are there, both there from the beginning. Okay. But it's almost as if it's like, this thing's not working out for me, so I'm going to use the other one, right? So it kind of becomes a substitute.
Yeah.
Right. So,
so maybe you can stop to see if there are any questions.
Yeah. If there are any questions, again, throw them into the
and
chat.
just so you know, we're live streaming, but faces don't show up, only the face of who's talking. So if you want to turn your camera on, unless you're talking, you will not show up in the live stream.
All right. I don't see any questions, so we could probably move on. Because I was so clear in my explanation that it's just,
these are deep concepts that needs digestion.
Yeah, or else everybody's like, what the heck is he talking about, man? How do I get my money back for this thing? Yeah. Okay.
So, Mario?
Yes, Lenny, go ahead.
Yeah. So when you say that these core qualities are co-emerging, is that the term you used?
Yeah, so the core qualities and the strategies are co-emergent, meaning that they're both there. Okay. One does not cause the other. Yeah.
And I would think that, well, for instance, I certainly did not know what mine was until you showed it. So we're not aware of it. I was aware of my primary strategy.
Right.
But you have to kind of be taught this, don't you think?
Sure. This is the deep secret knowledge that you only get through free webinars on Zoom. Yeah.
Module 2.
And then module 2. We'll be going more into depth on this in the certification program, Lenny. But yeah, so again, these ideas are kind of floating out there, right? Like, I said that there's the essential aspects in Sandra Maitre's books, which were for me the inspiration of this idea, right? So it's not a completely original insight by any stretch, but it's also something that's just not talked about that much in the Enneagram world.
And some of them I think you can easily see. I mean, I always see I see the joy of the enthusiast and the vitality of challengers. Mm-hmm. Some of them I'm glad you pointed out, I did not necessarily see.
Yeah.
Now, one of the, sorry, did you finish, Lenny?
Mm-hmm.
So these co-emergence, I think that it's important because the alternative of like the strategy being there to replace, like, this is not me, So this is not, again, the true self and the false self. It's not like the strategy is not me. The strategy is something that I use as well. And being aware of the core quality and nurturing it will help us grow, but it doesn't mean that we have to get rid of anything.
Yeah, another important idea that the 9 core qualities, I mean, as we say here, are deeper qualities of human nature, where they are 9 aspects of us rather than 9 different personalities or styles. So, I mean, each of us is having these 9 core qualities. We can have a challenge in one of them. Probably, as Mario said, we are having more challenges with the one corresponding to our Ennea point and the other 2 connected one. But from my experience as well, we might need to work on others at certain stages or certain situations or certain challenges in life. So, I mean, like the value, I mean, we would have situations in life, especially in work challenges, where you need to work on the value core quality with a leader, even if this leader is having preferred strategy of 4 or 5 or 7. But again, I mean, you will get more challenged on the point corresponding to your strategy and the 2 connecting the points.
Yeah, so Meta asked about balance here. So, I never quite know what to do with the idea of balance, Meta, right? I mean, because, for me, when people talk about work-life balance, for example, it kind of gives this connotation that I need to, devote equal time to work and to home, when for most people that's just not realistic, right? So it's about integration of work life. Am I taking care of my needs specifically, rather than are they balanced? And I feel it's kind of the same way with the core qualities, right? It's nice to think, okay, I'm going to set out to nurture and develop all these core qualities, and I'm going to go in a monastery and work on myself and do all these things. I find that it's best to kind of focus on what's not working for you, right? To kind of develop in that area, and then but pay attention to what's causing you trouble at the time, and then work on that. Okay. All right. And then, yeah, now you're going to brag about being in Bali. Meta, I got no time for you. I'm done with you. All right. So, Meta and I are old friends. So, okay. So let's go on here, Maria Jose, and talk about the accelerators. Okay. All right. So let's start at point 1. Okay. The core quality is objectivity. Like we said, the immature version of this is I just don't have preconceptions. I don't know I'm supposed to dislike people from Belgium yet. Okay. Yes, Didier, I said it, and you were my evidence of that. But so we haven't picked up these prejudices. In time, we do. Okay, in time, we start to rely on this idea that we have to have opinions about things. And this is what the 1 struggles with in particular. They don't feel truly objective, so they come up with a bunch of rules. All right. If I can't truly see clearly, at least I'll have a set of rules to tell me what to do. And they rely
and of course, that is not, we're not aware of that. We just do it.
Yes.
It's not like we're deliberately saying, okay, I'll pick this bunch of rules because I don't feel objective. It's what I do without thinking.
Yes. And when I say we think this or we decide this, from here on out, what Maria Jose said is absolutely right. It's not like the child is thinking, okay, well, I'm going to do this because I'm feeling stunted in my core quality of objectivity, right? It just kind of happens, right? So the way to help nurture objectivity, in addition to working with our Ennea-Type strategy, is to practice acceptance. Okay. Now, acceptance in this sense is not just saying to ourselves, well, you know what, there's a reason for everything, and that's just how it happens, and I have to be okay with that, right? It's not just, well, you know, the universe unfolds the way it should, and so whatever will be, will be. No, that's not acceptance, that's resignation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't mean
Accept,
that you like it or that it's good or anything. Yeah.
yes.
It's just not resisting it.
Yes. It's recognizing that it does us no good to be angry about things being the way they are, right? This doesn't mean we have to just say, okay, well, I have to live with this. Okay. It means that I can be angry, right? And be less effective in solving my problems because of my anger, or I can let go of my emotion. I can accept emotionally that things are as they are, and then I can work toward correcting them, improving them, bettering them in a way that is more effective because it's not distorted by emotion. All right. So acceptance helps us to learn to take our emotions out of something and see it clearly, which is the definition of objectivity. Okay. So this is a huge practice that benefits one. Maria Jose, why don't you talk about this a little bit, please?
So I think that this applies to everyone. Everyone can benefit from it. But for a type 1, I think that there's so much energy wasted in resisting how things are. It shouldn't be like this shouldn't be done like that, and I shouldn't think that, or that person shouldn't. And just letting that go and observing it and saying, okay, this is how it is, can make you feel even more perfect, because it's just you address things faster, you move on faster, but also it allows you to see things as they are, not as they should be. And that makes such a difference, because you can react kind of in your best version when you see things objectively. And so it's not even trying to feel perfect, it's seeing things clearly. Makes you feel like this thing about the right shoulder, the H on the right shoulder and the left shoulder, it gets you there. You know, it's not like, okay, this is what I did is perfect. No. I'm seeing things clearly, and that feels okay. You know, and it's and letting go of these assumptions or these prejudices or these rules on how things should be. And you see them as they are, it's just the best thing.
Yeah.
And this is the recognition and management of subjectivity. So it doesn't mean that you let go and forget about your prejudices. It's I see them, but I can see through them and beyond them. Yeah. And I think that's the mature kind of objectivity.
Yeah. This is a critical practice. And again, it's critical for all of us, right?
Mm.
To be able to step back. You know, I mean, it's kind of the essence of the serenity prayer, right? Of, you know, understanding some things I can't change, some things I can, and I pray for the wisdom to know the difference, right? You know, when people start to embrace this, it really changes them. But very often when I'm working with clients who get frustrated at people being less than perfect, right? I share with them what I call the chimpanzee rule, right? And this is, you know, rooted in the fact that we humans share 98.6 or 0.4% of our DNA with chimpanzees. Okay. So the difference between me and, Bonzo the chimp is about this much. Okay. That's a real old reference there, but it's about this much. And so any day that people aren't swinging in trees and throwing poop at each other, we're off to a good start, right? And so if we just remember that people are flawed and people have challenges, it allows us, and particularly the one, to not get so upset about it, okay? But to be more effective in dealing with things and with ourselves, okay? Good. Next slide, please. We move on to point 2. Core quality here is compassion. Okay, again, feeling what other people feel. Now, the immature version of this is just reflexive union, right? You feel pain, I feel pain. Okay. The mature version is managed and intentional union, meaning we're not pulled into it. We are aware of what we're experiencing and we have some capacity to manage it, right? How do we get that? Is by developing cognitive empathy. Okay. Now, it would be, I'll come back to Mike's comment there in a moment. It would seem that if any Enneagram type represents empathy, it would be Enneagram type 2. Okay? But there is a difference between emotional empathy, which is just a reactive empathy, and cognitive empathy, which is a conscious, thoughtful, and deliberate empathy. The way to illustrate that difference is, I'm looking at Gary now, okay? So, if I'm, with Gary and he looks cold to me, and I fall into sort of a 2-ish pattern or, practicing emotional empathy, I say, Gary, you look really cold. Here, take this blanket. Right? And I start trying to put a blanket on top of Gary. And Gary says, yeah, but time out, I'm fine. I'm not cold. Right? I said, no, Gary, I can feel how cold you are, Gary. Here, really put this blanket on, right? And drink this hot tea. Right? And he's like, no, stop. And so Gary gets up and says, this guy's crazy. I'm out of here. Okay. So that's emotional empathy, right? Where I am just responding to some intuition I have. Cognitive empathy is recognizing what I am experiencing when it comes to Gary and saying, Gary, you look cold to me. Would you like a blanket? Right? And he might say, no, I'm fine. But, I'm looking at him and his teeth are chattering and his lips are turning a little bit blue. And I can tell he's lost feeling in his fingertips. And I say, Gary, are you sure? Really, I've got this blanket here. And if he says to me, no, I'm fine, then I ease back and I, treat him the way he wants to be treated instead of imposing. The problem that 2s have is that they fall into this pattern of emotional empathy rather than cognitive empathy. And they misjudge, right? They go around throwing blankets on top of people who don't want a blanket. Okay? And what does this do? It causes separation. They lose connection, the one thing that they really want in life. Okay? So cognitive empathy is learning to evaluate our empathic intuitions and confirm them or disconfirm them. So Michael has Mike. Go ahead, Maria Jose, and then I'll.
Yeah, that then the mature compassion is not. It's more intentional. It's managed, and maybe that person needs something of me, that it's not just me feeling sorry or crying with you, but maybe holding you in a kind of strong way because that's what you need, not what I think you need. And so I don't lose myself in the other, but I am there for you as you need me. So it's different.
Just want to give an example. You said an example, a quick example that I have lived. Someone who was very sick, and the doctor said he has to really get some rest. And my friend, who was really compassionate, wanted to go every half an hour and check and say, are you okay? Which means that waking this person up. So it's, yeah, I mean, it was very compassionate, but immature, rather than in the beginning, he would have said that, okay, I'm staying in the hallway. If you need anything, just let me know and I will provide it to you. So he would provide some sleep and at the same time assurance that I'm there for you.
Exactly right, Tamer. And, you know, and I would suggest, and this again is kind of a semantic issue, but the disruption of the person's sleep who needs it is not it's not an act of compassion, right? It might feel to the individual like compassion. It's an act of sympathy, perhaps, right? Of, you know, I feel for you and I want to help. But real compassion is just being with a person and, you know, understanding what their needs are and what their feelings are and feeling it, right? So because people always ask me, well, what's the difference between compassion and empathy and sympathy and, you know, these sort of words. But you know, I absolutely agree with the concept you're describing there, Tamer. You know. Let's see, Mike commented something here. Mindfulness and meditation practices sound like possible disciplines that allow the cultivation of this acceptance. You're absolutely right, Mike. You know, again, in our module 2 program, we do talk about different qualities of mindfulness and how they apply to not just the objectivity, but to all these core qualities, really. I mean, you can probably see how it relates to compassion as well, based on what we've talked about. Cognitive empathy sounds like a grounded respect for another's boundaries. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay. It's about having effective boundaries so that I'm not just leaping over into your yard, but I realize there's a fence and a gate there, and I ask permission to come onto your yard. All right, is the way we like to think about it. Good observations. Okay. Next slide, please, Maria Jose. Value is the core quality of point 3. Value independent of accomplishment, right? Worth independent of accomplishment. The immature version of this is self-centered importance, right? You know, there was a big self-esteem movement in the United States in the 80s and 90s where, you know, every child gets a trophy, you know, whether they, you know, win the game or not, all these sort of things. And there was a real backlash to that. Okay. And they've done studies that said the single population that has the highest level of self-esteem is actually prisoners, right? You know, and, you know, so this kind of self-centered importance can lead us to thinking the rules don't apply to us, right? That's why, you know, this true self that people talk about, if you think of it from the, you know, the D.W. Winnicott perspective, you know, the true self is not really that nice a person, you know, because it's all about me and I deserve something special and I am special. The mature version of it is what we call self-possessed achievement, meaning I achieve without believing that my value and worth are tied to the achievement. I strive to accomplish, but I also understand that I have value whether I meet my goals or not, whether I achieve great things or not, etc. Just talking to a client of mine who's an Enneagram type 3 this morning, and he was talking about how his wife keeps asking him, why is it never enough? You've accomplished this and you've accomplished this and you've accomplished this. And the reason is because he's out of contact with true value. And instead, he is relying on achievement in order to try and recapture this feeling of being valuable. But it's never enough. He's scratching the wrong shoulder, right? So
Mario, and it's also dependent on external recognition, whereas the mature version is internal. You don't need the external recognition for it.
And the external recognition can change. So, I mean,
Yeah.
each one would see achievement in a different way. So whom would be the standard in this case?
Yes, yes. Excellent points. And so the practice, the accelerator here is purpose, right? Defining our purpose, sitting back, spending a little bit of time asking ourselves, okay, what really matters to me? Okay? What is it I want to achieve? Go ahead, Tamer.
Yeah, and I think we're not trying to say that you don't need to act.
Yeah.
What we're trying to say, act when the action is needed. Don't act to create value for yourself, because the value is intrinsic.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, and again, it's, you know, where would the world be without dysfunctional threes, right? I mean, we'd still be, you know, living in, you know, huts and that sort of thing, right? You know, so, you know, there's something important about wanting to accomplish things, but we also, like Tamer's saying, have to keep it in perspective and recognize that we are not what we do. Okay, we are just us. Okay, and that's enough, even though we can go and accomplish more. All right.
Yeah, and when we work with clients and work with them on writing like a purpose statement, they panic. It is scary, and they don't know where to start because they usually see it as external, what kind of drives them, and they don't stop usually to think about what's important to me. What is it that I want to accomplish in my life?
It can feel daunting, right? It can feel when you say to somebody, okay, we're going to work on a purpose statement. You know, they start to say, oh my goodness, man, you know, I got to go on a mountaintop somewhere and think and meditate and pray and, you know, and wait for, you know, the clouds to part and my purpose to be revealed to me. No, it's a work in progress, right? It's, you know, this is what matters to me now. And I always tell them, look, we're not getting a tattoo. We're writing this in pencil, right? And you can erase it, you can modify it, or, you know, for kids these days, we say, you know, you're putting it in what is that one that disappears after a while? Snapchat, right? You know, not quite that superficial. For us, we can say we're writing it in Word. We're not making a PDF necessarily. Okay, it can grow and change and evolve, and it should over time. But if we don't have a defined sense of purpose, we're like a hamster in a wheel, trying to achieve, trying to achieve, trying to achieve, and never feeling like we get anywhere. All right. Next slide, please, Maria Jose. Individuality type 4, okay? The immature version we call de facto distinction, meaning, you know, I'm unique, I'm individual just because I have a different footprint than anybody else in the world, right? You know, it's the default position everybody starts from. The mature version is we think of as a spontaneous unfolding. What we mean by this is that we are continuing to grow, we are continuing to mature, and it's coming from this place of authenticity, but it's not manufactured, right? It's not saying, oh, I know how I'll be different. I'll go and I'll get a tribal tattoo on my face. Okay. Well, no, that's, you know, that's striving to feel unique. It's not truly being an individual. Okay. So the problem that the 4 has is that they are manufacturing uniqueness. They are not expressing individuality in this
Yeah,
sense.
it's like they're forcing it,
Yes.
and it comes from comparing themselves usually to other people. And I'm like this, I'm not like that. I want to be different from these kind of people. And this identification has to do with this identifying with these comparisons and just evolving on this unfolding that it's spontaneous, not based on me being different or similar to anything else.
Yeah. There was a great story that I read in the paper a while back that illustrates this. back when the hipster movement started, some years ago, and guys started growing the long beards and, wearing kind of flannelish shirts and, dressing a very kind of similar way, started out in Williamsburg, a part of Brooklyn, across the river from Manhattan. And at first it was a mark of individuality, right? And then you started noticing there are all these guys that look this way, right? And there was the story about how this guy sued a advertising agency because they used a picture of him in one of their ads without permission, right? And so they get to the, they start going through the machinations of this lawsuit, and they realize that it's not actually him. It's just a guy that looks like him, because all these hipsters look exactly alike, right? So in their effort to distinguish themselves, they all start to look alike. And this is what can happen with fours, right? Here you go, just being a four again, right? So disidentification is learning to recognize the things we identify with, right? What labels do we give ourselves? What comparisons do we get stuck in making? And how can we start to let go of those? Realize I am not my father. I am not my mother. I'm not this. I'm not this. I just am. Okay. It's very easy. Just, give it a week. You'll be fine. Give it a week. You'll be fine. All right. Okay. It's simple, but it ain't easy. What do you want from me for free? All right. So, okay. So at point 5, we have the core quality of intuition, right? It's this inner knowing. Now, the immature version is naive assumption. I could do this. It doesn't look so hard, right? I look into the cockpit of that airplane and I say, any monkey could do this. You just pull this thing, push the button, we're good to go, right? Well, that's not mature intuition, okay? Teaching one of my sons to drive these days, and he thought it was real easy, right? He would watch me drive, he would watch his mother drive, and he'd say, piece of cake, until he gets behind the wheel, right? And he realizes that it's a lot more difficult. And he cannot trust his own intuitions like we adults can, because we've done this a billion times, right? So mature intuition is skilled responsiveness, okay? It's the intuition of an expert, okay? You cannot be an improvisational jazz player until you've done the scales for hours and hours and hours. You cannot be an intuitive tennis player until you have practiced hitting the ball deliberately and intentionally thousands and thousands of times, okay? Any activity to become truly intuitive at it requires intentional practice, okay?
With 5, many times what they think they have to do is think about it or study or research it and think that they will be skilled at it, or they'll have more abilities by thinking about it or studying about it, reading about it.
Yeah.
Now what they need to do is practice it, and that's why we have this as the accelerators. So in order to feel intuitive about the intuition that they need to address the things that they need to in their lives, they need to practice and not just think about it, not just study about it.
I have a friend who can tell you everything there is to know about how to hit a golf ball, but every time he hits a golf ball, it goes off into the woods or, somewhere, because he doesn't golf, right? He reads about golf. He watches YouTube videos about golf. That's not intuition. All right. So next slide, please, Maria Jose. We go on to point 6 and we talk about confidence. Okay, it's this feeling of I'll be okay. The immature version is I don't know enough to recognize the threat yet. Okay, but then we start to see all the threats. We start to see all of our failures. We start to see all of the things that could go wrong and will go wrong, and we start to lose confidence. So the 6 strives to be secure in order to try and recapture that feeling of confidence, but it doesn't work. Mature confidence is what we call appropriate preparation, meaning that, well, yeah, if I'm going to go walk in the woods and I know there are bears there, I'm going to carry bear spray. All right. But I probably don't need it at Walmart. Okay. So, and so the practice is, although I've been to Walmarts that maybe, well, anyway. The accelerator here is learning to understand evidence, learning to collect and evaluate evidence so that we can properly assess risk. Right? The 6 needs to make a long list of all the things they've accomplished in their life, all the skills they have, all the capabilities they have, so they can remind themselves, you know what? I'm not so bad at this. I'll probably be okay. So evidence is the practice there. Okay. Next, please.
Did we change this, Mario?
We changed it. Yes, the slide is out of date. So
we can fix that right away.
so
Is that how you spell it, or
no Y.
no Y?
Yeah. All right. So the core quality here is joy, feeling of well-being, independent of accomplishment. Okay. The immature version is whimsical pleasure. This is fun. This feels nice. Okay. The mature version we think of as attentive fulfillment. Okay. And how do we get there? Through savoring something, being in the moment, of extending our experience just a little bit. Okay. And so this gets us back to this idea of, being present, mindfulness. Okay. Of saying, you know what? This tastes good. I'm not going to immediately start thinking about what else I could eat. If I'm smelling the roses over here, I'm not going to start immediately asking myself if the lilies smell better somewhere else. Okay. I'm going to learn to sit and savor a little bit. And what happens is, for the 7, their mind sort of calms down, right? They start to relax and they start to experience real joy. Okay. Instead of striving to feel excited and seek stimulation. Point 8.
Yeah, there's this quality, and I think you said it, but it reminded me of the conversations we've been having about how this is kind of feels slower. It's like you have to slow down to savor. It's not fast.
Yeah. And it's important to set appropriate expectations, particularly with 7s around this issue, right? It's, I like to tell a story of a friend of mine who decided he was going to start meditating. So he signed up for a week-long silent retreat as his first meditation experience, right? Instead of taking a class, a 1-hour introduction or watching a YouTube video. This was before YouTube, but he says, I'm going all in, right? He didn't make it to lunch on the first day before he left, right? Because there's no way this is going to happen. Okay. So, we have to do a little bit at a time, If I can enjoy the roses for 10 seconds, try for 12, right? And then try for 13 and stretch it out a little bit each time. Okay. At point 8, the core quality is vitality. Okay. Vitality, again, is this inner energy. And we can relate to this when we see 8s, like 8 said, okay, I get the vitality thing. But what we don't usually know about 8s, unless we are one, is that when they are not in excess mode, they are in, I feel dead inside mode. Okay. And they kind of want to be left alone and hibernate and all these sort of things. This is kind of, we could think of them as kind of adapting that 0.5 strategy in some ways, but they're like a fire hose. Okay. 8s, when they're in excess mode of impulsive self-expression, are like a fire hose with nobody holding on to it, right? It's turned on, there's water going everywhere, and it's making a big mess. Okay. The problem that eights have is after they realize they're making a mess, they often shut down the vitality, and it's like the fire hose goes limp, right? It's just kind of laying there on the ground. It's not doing any good. Right? Self-discipline is the practice for the eight. It's about finding some way to take to put myself in someone or something else's hands, at least for a little while. And this can be taking a class, right? Signing up for a martial arts class and taking instruction from the instructor. Okay? It can be, falling into, or adapting, any kind of self-discipline practice. It's important to point out here that we use self-discipline and not discipline.
Yeah, never try to discipline an eight.
Yeah, right. It's, they don't take it well.
You won't get far.
You won't get far. I've been having people tell me for years, you know what, you need to start eating better, you fat pig. And, and I just say, screw you, I can do what I want, right? Until I decided, you know what, I'm going to put myself on a better eating plan. And, it's working. But when other people tell me I have to do it, forget about it. Yeah, I don't, so it has to be something, but it has to be a plan, okay, that I hold myself and have other people hold me responsible to as well. Okay, so the mature version looks like the expressed a managed life force, okay, meaning that somebody's holding on to the fire hose and pointing it in the right direction. Okay. All right. Tamer, you gonna say something?
No, I just remembered your example and my example. Your example of fire hose to put up fire, and my example was fire hose to grow roses. So, expressive example of personalities.
Yes. All right. Good. Point 9, again, where we kind of started earlier, is around benevolence. Okay, it's this idea of goodwill. Okay. It starts off as just lack of ill intent, right? Babies don't want to kill you, right? Babies don't want to see bad things happen to you, right? They might develop ill intent over time. Nines, there's this belief that nines are these helpful, caring, loving people, and some of them are, and some of them are to some extent, but nines are really just kind of trying to stay out of the way, right? So it's not so much about expressing goodwill as it is just not harming others. Okay. So the way they learn to express goodwill is by practicing generativity. Okay. Generativity is a term that comes from the psychologist Erik Erikson. He used it to describe, the grandparenting stage in life, where the grandparent, it doesn't have any real responsibility to the grandchildren. They get to hand them back to the parents, but they just get to help that child become something better. It's reaching out to the next generation and selflessly contributing, helping to develop, investing in some way. And nines benefit when they say, you know what, I have something to offer. Let me share it with those people who need it. Instead of thinking they're not important, instead of thinking they don't have anything to offer, they find what they have to offer and they express it through generativity.
And when they do it this way, it doesn't feel like they're being arrogant, because one of the things that stops them, it's thinking that people will see them as arrogant, that they think too highly of themselves. And when they do it like this, like mentoring or helping the younger generations, it's like they're willing to do it because it's kind of helping people, nurturing people.
Hey, Jose, do we have a slide where we can see all of the accelerators on one page here?
Yes.
Because
later.
what we
earlier.
Earlier, yeah, let's go back to that for a minute, please.
There.
All right, so what we find is that people really benefit from working on the accelerator at their Enneagram point and the 2 connecting points. Okay, And we find that these themes pop up over and over again. So for example, when we're working with a 1, it's about practicing acceptance, but it's also about practicing savoring, right? It says
Yeah.
enjoyment here, but it's about learning to savor things. It's not, oh, you know what? I got to go be a 7. I got to get crazy and let my hair down. I've got to go to the supermarket and move things around on the shelves and be wacky. It's about learning to savor and experience things. I actually have seen that given as developmental advice for 1s. I just baffles me. But anyway, it's about learning to savor something, to find the goodness in it. And
but also, sorry, just the connection there. When you practice acceptance, it's easier to savor things as well. So they're all connected. You work on one and it impacts the others.
Yes. And learning to disidentify, right? Let go and recognize and let go of these identifications that we have. So all 3 of those things really work together for 7s. Okay.
For 1s.
I'm sorry, for 1s. Yes, thank you. Whenever I work with 3s, 6s, and 9s, it's kind of easy because it's the same 3 issues, just put in different priority, right? And you just kind of have them work on those same 3 things, and you see this tremendous growth in them. Right? So even 3s need to gather evidence of their accomplishments so they have perspective about it. So we encourage you, again, we're happy to send this list, this file to you in PDF. So you'll have a copy of this. Look at these different accelerators and, start adding them to your growth. All right. So let's see here. Mike had a comment. Sounds like for all these strategies, there's an existential egoic fear that without our reactivity, we don't exist, don't experience ourselves as alive, relevant, necessary. Yeah, that's way deeper than I can go, Mike. But I think you're absolutely right. What happens is the strategies, the personality strategies, become this substitute for real experience, okay, for these deeper sort of qualities. And you're absolutely right. We fear letting go of them. Okay. Now, we did a webinar a while back. If you go on our YouTube page, you can just go to YouTube and look up Awareness to Action International. We did a session called The Missing Link, where we talked about working with the strategy, learning to reframe it and rewrite it instead of rejecting or trying to reject the ego, right? And when you combine these 2 activities, you can really start to make progress. So, are there any other questions before we let people go? Maria Jose, Tamer, anything you guys want to say before we wrap up here?
I would ask people have questions, really.
Yeah.
But we have 1 minute to go.
All right. If you have a question, you can shout it out.
In the meantime, we can... go ahead.
I just would like to remind everyone that, is it today or tomorrow the deadline of the early birds?
No, we actually
Friday.
moved it. We actually
Friday.
moved it to Friday, right? So if you're interested in module 1, not only can you make use of the early bird rate, but you can also use the discount code we're going to send you and get an extra 10% off. We're practically giving it away for free. So
how again can we access the charts that you presented today?
Yeah, so send an email to us at info@awareness-to-action.com. Let us know that you would like the PDF of the slides, and we will email them to you. So
I just put the email in the chat. So I would like to remind everyone we're starting the modules 1 and 2, and we have the podcast, and we're also on Clubhouse. If you are on Clubhouse, we are doing some hosting some rooms in Clubhouse.
Yeah, it's called
If
the
you need an
Enneagram
invite,
Club. So
yeah, called the Enneagram Club. If you need an invitation for it, we can give you one. So send us an email.
I'd particularly like to thank all the Mario Sikoras who joined us today. And I had no idea my name was so common. All right. So really, folks, thanks. If you have questions, feel free to shoot us an email, and it was great to have you all here. All right. So long. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.